All right, while we're bringing up the slides, just to introduce myself. So my name is Justin Stuckert. I'm the current chair of Mission United of Broward County here in South Florida.
And I'm Stella Tokar. I'm the vice chair of the advisory council and been with Mission United since 2012. And both of us are business owners. We have our own businesses. And of course, we're volunteers on the council.
You get the phone close to that. Does anybody else hear that feedback? Raise your hand in the camera maybe if you hear the feedback. Thanks so much. Not us. All right, well, it's not me, so if I mute my microphone, it doesn't change. So.
Dan Campbell.
Jim? Oh. Down there somewhere.
Somebody's got a microphone on. Maybe Dan Campbell. I don't know. How about now? Now can you hear me?
Hilarious.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good.
Oh, yeah. Bye, Dan.
Good.
All right, perfect. Thanks so much for that. If anybody has any hearing problems later on, just wave your arms like crazy and we'll know.
Dan Campbell has been.
Good.
That's
the building.
So like I said, we're with Mission United, South Florida. I'll give you the short version of it now, but our program revolves around our case managers. So we do an intake process with the veterans that reach out for help. They evaluate all the different issues. We learned real early on that was important. If they come in with a housing issue and they're about to get foreclosed on, obviously they have other issues going on, so us just putting them in another house isn't going to solve everything, and we end up seeing them again later. So we evaluate the entire person and really identify all of the issues, employment, mental health, whatever it may be, and try and serve all of them at the same time. So we've developed a very large network of service providers down here in South Florida. That's really the key to our success. So, you know, a lot of our partners, and I list some in one of my later slides, but, you know, including the VA, a lot of nonprofits, a lot of for-profit corporations, and, you know, a variety of other people here in our community. And then the community involvement has been just vital. We have typically at one of our advisory board meetings, which we hold monthly, we've got 40 to 60 people there, each representing a different organization right here in the county. So a lot of those are the big Fortune 500 corporations downtown, and then countless other nonprofits, government officials, Paul Russo from the VA system here in South Florida, and that's really been the key for us. We focus on 6 pillars, so you can see them on the slide there. Those are our areas that we specifically serve. Each one of those areas, we have a separate committee of professionals that focus just on that and trying to grow our services and our capabilities in that field. Next slide. So this is what we're going to talk about today. We took this information because this is what we, the CVEB members, said that we thought was most critical. This is based actually off the CVEB task force report that they were talking about earlier. It's also based off of a survey that I had sent out maybe a week or so ago. Thank you to all 5 or 6 of you that filled that out for me. Greatly appreciated. And then we do a lot of local focus groups with veterans from, 20 years old up through their 80s. And we get a lot of information from them, that things that we just wouldn't be thinking about otherwise, and lots of great input on what's going well, what's going not as well, and even input on other organizations. So we're going to talk about suicide prevention and what we've done to try to work towards serving that need, employment, which is a huge issue here in South Florida, homelessness, and then general outreach and awareness of our program, which again is one of our big challenges. And then some of the challenges and gaps that we've identified were, again, the outreach piece, the livable wage employment more than the unemployment sometimes. The need for volunteers, again, we're a nonprofit organization, so it's all volunteer run. It's maybe 3 or 4 staff total, so super important. And then partnering with other organizations and how we've done that. So next slide. Some of the guidelines, just keep us on as much on time as possible and cover as much as we can. We'd like for this to be a two-way conversation, so we'd love to hear from everybody else. Looks like we've got 150 plus people on the call right now, so we'd love to hear from as many of you as possible, but if you're going to comment or share a best practice or anything like that, please try to keep it short to the point. Try to stay on topic the best we can. Understand that we'd like to continue this conversation after this, so that we don't have to get everything in here if we can't, but it doesn't mean that we'll never talk about it. So if there's anything that we talk about or a best practice that you have, if you could please share that with Cajun so that he can get it out to the rest of us. Or if you have a challenge that you want just some third-party input on, you send all that through Cajun, then he can get it to us, and we can share some of the things that we've tried to work or didn't work in the past. I'd like to try and focus more on the positive things, the best practices, as opposed to complaining about things that aren't working the best that we can. And understand that what we're sharing from here is our opinion on what we believe has worked well for us here in our specific area. And like they were talking about earlier, each area is going to be very, very different. Our unemployment or underemployment issues here in South Florida, the cost of living here in South Florida is obviously going to be a little bit different than some of the rural areas further north. So we'll jump right into it. Next slide. So suicide prevention. This is what most of the slides are going to look like. I'm sorry they're not prettier. But so some of the things that we've done in the realm of suicide prevention is the building a sense of community. So we really believe that a lot of the veterans that are having these thoughts or are having challenges personally, when we get out of the military, again, myself included, we lose that sense of community, we lose that camaraderie, that family that we had, and we also lose our purpose. So when we were in, we were serving the country, we were defending our family and everybody in our community, and then when we get back, we lose a lot of that. So we do what we can here to try and build those things back up in the veteran population. Part of that sense of community is we try to get them as involved in everything as we can. So we do a lot of networking events down here. And it's not just networking events like CEOs to people looking for jobs, which we do those, but also just veterans networking. So we'll just host we'll buy you a drink night at one of the local establishments, alcoholic or non-alcoholic. And we just get all the vets out there. We get 40 vets sometimes there and just have them hang out with each other, which is a huge need for the veterans. And they seem to really, really like those, and a lot of positive stuff has come out of that. We also try to get vets involved with organizations. So we try to get them on as many of our boards as we can. We try to get them involved with some of our partner organizations. Just anything that we can do to get vets helping vets. I was active duty for 11 years. Most of that time I was an NCO. I was in charge of other soldiers, so my whole job for most of my career was just taking care of soldiers. And when I got out, I missed that a lot. So I very, very quickly got into an organization here at Mission United where I could continue to serve my comrades, take care of my brothers and sisters. And I went from helping soldiers to vets, real smooth transition. And again, it gave me that purpose and that sense of community that I need here. And then also social networking has been huge. So there's a group of us outside of Mission United started a Facebook group, as silly as it sounds, called the Veterans of South Florida. And now we're up to right around 2,000 veterans in that group, and they communicate daily. It costs nothing to set up. It took 4 people to start it about 3 years ago, and almost every day somebody's on there posting that they're looking for a job, they're looking for a mechanic, they need help putting up shutters, they need anything, and I'm broken down on the side of the highway, anything and everything. and these vets respond within minutes. And it gives them, again, that sense of purpose and that sense of community, and them, just vets taking care of vets like we're supposed to be doing, helping out our battle buddies. So that has been huge for that community. And the same thing, at 4 o'clock in the morning, there might be somebody that posts and says, hey, I just need to talk to somebody. And 80 people will start blowing up their phones. So it's been a very awesome immediate response tool that works real well down here, and to disseminate information like events and other things we have going on.
So it would be interesting to hear how you are creating a sense of community for your veterans that you serve in your areas. Any best practices or, and I will have to add to this that for the woman veteran, this looks very different. That sense of community, we discovered a couple years ago, we went on a path. That whole year, we held focus groups, conversations, much like the presentation you heard on women veterans today. The same course of action was done locally here in South Florida. And so we compared our findings to the state findings through a survey, and then also with the national findings. And the top 5 needs for women veterans that I want to share with you as we move into this discussion about sense of community was, number 1 was invisibility. They felt like there was nowhere to connect. They felt disjointed. The second thing was they felt like they were falling through the cracks. They needed a network, and they really didn't understand their benefits and their service programs. Not that they were ignorant or stupid about it, it's just that they weren't informed, and they didn't know where to go and how to go about taking advantage of those things. So they felt like they were falling through the cracks, which was evident in the presentation on women veterans in healthcare today. The third thing was self-isolation. Because all these things were happening, and most of these women that are becoming veterans are single parents. So they self-isolated themselves. They just felt like there was nowhere to go, and so they kind of gave up. The fourth thing was unemployment. Unemployment for women veterans is twice the amount than the male. And then some of them, the final result was homelessness. And again, many of the homeless women veterans are moms, and they have children. So those were the top 5 needs. So when we're talking about building a sense of community for your veterans, what are some of the things that are working for you, and have you separated an outreach to the women veteran community, and how does that look for you?
Mute.
What would like to be doing? A best practice, something that's going well for you, or something that's a challenge.
We have giveaways.
So how do we get a hold, how do we communicate, get a hold of the veterans that aren't necessary? And I know your Facebook page is outstanding, and I'm new to the area, so it's something that I'm leaning on as someone who's come here from Pittsburgh and is now the outreach coordinator in West Palm Beach and knows nothing about West Palm Beach or where the veterans are. So how do we get a hold of those veterans that aren't necessarily utilizing social media? Even though it's hard to believe, but believe it or not, there are veterans, even veterans in my generation, in your generation, which is the same, that aren't utilizing social media.
Yeah.
How do we find those veterans? Because we all know they're out there.
Yeah, so how are the Veterans Engagement Boards throughout the Southeast reaching out or doing outreach to figure out where those veterans are that we are not contacting through other means, whether that means is seeking their care at VA medical facilities or utilizing social media? How are you reaching out to that population that otherwise would not be contacted? Anybody?
One thing I'd like to throw out there, KG, is the local media. We talked about it earlier.
Yes,
Estella and I and Justin and I mentioned it. Local media TV spots. Have a good news story. Say, hey, the veterans are getting together. See if that happens. Newspapers. See if newspapers will react to it as an option. Or go to the medical center, or Paul, you could support me on this one too. Go to the medical center and just put up like an advertisement, or a board meeting, or at the regional office or the VBA office. Say, hey, we're going to get together. Join the CVEB. And then, of course, the last one is at the open sessions.
So
Have an open session, have booths and everything, make it a big event, and have everyone come in there. Talk about education benefits. Have a booth, a special ed just for education, because so many of our veterans who've earned their education benefits aren't using them, and they could be handed down to their family members. What a benefit.
Comcast, everybody has Comcast.
Yeah.
They do those public service
Yeah.
announcements,
PSAs.
for free. I mean, why can't, if you're gonna have like South Florida Veterans, the Facebook, or you're gonna have an event, somebody reach out to, Comcast and say, hey, do you guys mind doing a public service event in the Fort Lauderdale, Broward County area? I mean, they just send out send it, like at midnight when you think everybody's up, or like in the afternoon. And that should be sufficient enough to like, at least get that engagement piece. I think that's what's lacking, is the engagement, or the advertisement of it. That we
They do
don't
that
have.
free? Comcast does that free?
Exactly,
There
I'm
are,
getting
yes,
it.
so each, media group has a PSA protocol.
Mhm.
Not every radio station has it anymore, but there are a lot of them that still do, and we try to utilize them as much as possible. We were just talking about the rebranding of how the community is being informed, and the picture that the media is painting of the veteran is, one-dimensional. The veteran is multi-dimensional. There are different, transition is transition, but there are different faces to the veteran's, demeanor and who they are. And our PR we need to use that same media source and kind of reverse it and take active role in getting the message out there and rebrand what a veteran looks like, and make sure that we show all sides of a veteran's life.
Wanna talk that?
No,
Hey,
I have a whole other slide for that.
Oh.
Okay, all right, so we'll get there, but I'm sorry, Stella, go ahead, I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, I was just wondering if we could open the floor back up to anybody out there that wants to share a best practice on, creating a sense of community, or a challenge that maybe we could discuss, from your, community.
So I'm just gonna interject this too, Chamber of Commerce. Well, how awesome would it be to have a hiring vets job fair sponsored by the Chamber of Commerce, and let all corporate America come to it to focus on hiring veterans. And the way you get in, show your 214.
Many of our municipalities in Broward, we have 31 cities here, and I know 3 of them that have veteran fairs, job fairs within their cities, and I believe there's probably more than that. But the Chambers of Commerce partner with them, and the municipalities are lending themselves to that, so.
And I have 2 whole slides on it for you. But to answer your question about how do we reach the veterans that aren't maybe on social media, or that, aren't involved in our traditional choke points that we think of, infantry backgrounds, everything's gonna have weird infantry times. But, I think a big piece of it is veteran to veteran. So 75% of the veterans that I've done focus groups with say that they interact and socialize with other veterans at least once a month. About half of them is weekly. So that word of mouth spreading is so much better than a lot of other things. And I'm not one to sugarcoat a lot of things, but there's a lot of stigmas out there about organizations, the VA included. So if we're putting out information as the VA, certain people are going to listen to it. If we're putting information out as just a bunch of vets that hang out in a warehouse sometimes and drink beer out of a cooler, different groups are going to listen to it. So to have those advocates out there that are not technically, affiliated with the VA or with Mission United or with any other organization, they're just guys or women, just like anybody else. Like, hey, you know what? If you ever did need something, these are the guys to call. That's been huge. So that's why I like the Facebook group. There's no affiliation, there's nobody that runs the Facebook group, no organization, it's just a bunch of vets hanging out and trying to manage each other.
Justin.
Hi, Justin and Stella, this is Joe up in Jacksonville. Good to see you this morning. We have a couple of best practices that folks want to share, but before I pass it on to her, I want to tell you that in my numerous visits down to Fort Lauderdale, hey, Ryan, one of the best practices that you're not sharing is what your group does. The United Way and the Mission United down there markets to the community from all 4 corners of your county. In poor neighborhoods, rich neighborhoods, at job fairs, at elementary schools. You guys hand out tens of thousands of those cards to every one of your advocates at every one of your meetings, and we all walk around with a 211 if you're a military veteran card, Ryan's got to know everybody in that frickin' county and through his volunteer network. So the volunteer network being at every event, from that little girl at the cupcake scale at the elementary that called in her mom when living in the car, all the things you've got going on. So don't forget that best practice. That the role of the Mission United and your board is to communicate, and you reach veterans that don't even know just because everybody's got that mission. Next on the agenda, what do you got?
So I'm Helena Hughes, the Horror Veterans Network, Jacksonville, Florida. For the last 2 years, we host events every single month for women veterans. Every single month, we deal with having a set number of women veterans who actually register for the event, but having a very small percentage of those women veterans actually attend. At the start of this year, we began sending out emails. Why are you not attending the events after you signed up? What's taking place? Because they're women veterans, we just can't assume that it's a lack of responsibility. There's typically something that is the driving factor behind women veterans not attending these events. And what we find out the biggest factor is depression. And of your top 5, I can't remember your first name, Stella, your top 5, I didn't hear you mention depression or the military sexual trauma and the suicide rate that is plaguing the women veteran community right now. Depression is really the major factor to why these women veterans aren't signing up. The day they sign up, they have every intention of attending, but then when we actually hold the event, they don't attend.
We're muting.
You're absolutely right. And in number 3, the self-isolation, that's where the depression sets in. And there is a myriad of things that go along with that self-isolation. But I have a question for you. When you began, how long have you been doing these events for women, and where did you start in finding the women to invite?
So our first event was hosted in December of 2016, and we did an open community holiday social geared specifically towards women veterans and their children, because that hadn't been done in the area. From there, starting January 2017, we hosted an event every single month. And the reason we did that was because at the beginning of January, we had a woman veteran in the Fort Lauderdale area who murdered her 10-year-old daughter and then committed suicide. And we said to ourselves as an organization, the reason why events like that take place is because there really is no place for women veterans to gather and talk. Our male veterans gather every week. They get together for coffee, they swap battle stories, they pat each other on the back, but women veterans don't do that, which is why they self-isolate, which is why they have depression. But getting them to now attend these events, they don't feel welcome at a lot of the events that we hold for veterans. So I have to get out there and be the encourager to women veterans and say, forget about your military experience, let that go. The veteran community is not your military branch. Get out there, attend these events. One of the biggest events for us, we toured our most people last year from the Southern Women's Show. So that's one of the events we're doing this year. Again, it's in October in the Jacksonville area, and we're also signed up to do the event in North Carolina. Because guess what? Women veterans will go to baseball events, they'll go to football events, they'll go to Southern Women's Shows, but they won't come to veteran events.
Hey, Stella, Shelby Decker in your neck of the woods, I know she's on your Women's Veterans Committee. You guys have done a lot of work with that particular committee. Perhaps there's some material or a summary or something you could add to your package that we could get out, because those are similar comments that I've heard her repeatedly talk about that could be best practices to share.
Good. Sure will. Yes, well.
Great. We have Bay Pines that wants to make a comment.
Bay Pines? Going once?
Are they muted?
Twice?
They probably are. That's a VTEL if you can check that out.
Turn off your mute if you need to make a comment.
All right, Bay Pines, we'll come back to you. Another point, just more specifically talking about the women veterans. I have always been historically, as Mission United, we've talked about doing a women-specific veteran committee and doing specifically women events and all of those things. I have traditionally been against it. Again, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. I am much more inclusive than exclusive, and I really didn't enjoy the idea of taking specific groups from the main group and putting them into little pots over on the side. We had one for LGBT community. We had all these different groups, a Vietnam era one, a post 9/11 one. I was always very against it. I did happen to sit in on about the first 5 minutes of one of our first women veterans committees meetings, and I was immediately changed my mind. The stuff that they shared about how comfortable they were talking about certain things when there's a man even in the room, or talking to a doctor at the VA that's a man, or just some things that have happened in their past or that are affecting them today that they're just not comfortable sharing with males, was mine, you know, it really opened my eyes. So, to anybody else that's out there that may, you know, have second thoughts about women-specific groups or focus groups or committees or anything like that, like I said, I would definitely encourage you to do it and get their input, because, you know, it's making a big difference down here, and the women that have been coming to those meetings come religiously. So they're very loyal to the organization, they're very loyal to help. And before, like we had mentioned a little bit ago here, now that they know somebody there, they're very comfortable going there. Whereas some of these other meetings or organizations or things that they want to go to, even if it's a networking event, if they don't know another woman that's going to be there that they're comfortable with, they may just not go. So, want to throw that in.
And let me reemphasize something Justin said earlier. I'm a retired CEO of a Chamber of Commerce. This is true in business, and this is true with this community of veterans that we now serve. And that word of mouth is still the #1 tool for marketing. Word of mouth is still the #1 tool, whether it's in business or doing something like we're doing with our veterans, getting the word out. People are more comfortable when they grow in relationships. And so word of mouth, whatever experience, and that could be negative as well. We have to keep that in mind, that anything that we're doing to service our veteran community by word of mouth will be spread, and people will respect and respond to that relationship more than anything else we do in advertising. So, so creating a great experience is a very pinnacle value that we have here at Mission United. Every experience, from a volunteer to serving a vet to whoever is engaged with that Mission United moment, we really want to create a great experience. And, you know, when we know of the contrary, we just make adjustment and go on from there.
Awesome.
Anything else on sense of community before Justin moves on to another topic?
Bay Pines should be on here.
Bay Pines, it's your last chance.
Was that Andy?
Yeah.
And if you need, just text me the question you have and I'll ask it.
Oh, you can hear us now, right?
I can hear you.
There we go.
Yeah, we keep getting muted automatically, so we keep having to hit *6. So, yeah, so you can hear me clearly. I don't know if you can see us, but the camera was working before with Cisco. It's fine in here. I think it was more of a Cisco tech thing. Can you see us?
In Lima Charlie.
Not anymore.
No? You can't see us?
Yes.
We can't see you. We can hear you great, though.
Oh, okay. Well, then we'll go from here. So I'm in the room with some great community leaders and VA leaders and volunteers in the community. So they have some great things to share. The work they've done, it was one of the first community efforts that started when we went down this path of community veterans engagement boards several years ago. So we definitely want to share with you some best practices and things that they've done. I'm going to turn it over to Suzanne Klinker, who is the VA Medical Center Director at Bay Pines. So, Suzanne?
Great. Thank you, Andy. Good morning, everyone. It's my privilege to be here with you today. We are one of the first 10 community engagement boards that were created in the country, and we're very fortunate on our Bay Pines campus to have both the St. Petersburg Regional Office from VBA as well as the Bay Pines National Cemetery. And both of the leaders at those stations are engaged in our Community Engagement Board. We've been very active now for coming on 3 years, it's a little over 3 years. And I'd like to introduce Brett Miller, who's our present chairman, to give you some information about our accomplishments and our plans. Thank you.
Thanks, Suzanne. So I guess in terms of just things that might be of interest to you folks, when we first formed, we, like probably most of you, recognize that most veteran service groups did a pretty good job within their own areas, but didn't talk to one another too much. So we built on some initial work that had been done at some local universities And we now publish a countywide resource guide, which is 18 pages long. It's done in partnership with the county government, who prints it for us, and it's hosted on the county website. We followed that up with a strategic planning session where we got together the heads of about 50 different veteran groups in the community, also in partnership with one of the local universities. There were a couple of ideas that came out of that we were able to implement. One was a veteran resource card, a handy small card that we distribute to all law enforcement personnel in the county. We work with the local police union to put that together and to facilitate its distribution. The other thing that came out of that strategic planning session was the need for a medical legal partnership. So we have a pro bono legal service here in the Tampa Bay area that is partnering with the medical center a couple of days a week now here at the medical center, where we have lawyers on site to work with veterans who are here at the medical center. Finally, with the printing of the most recent VA welcome guide, which is a fabulous document, you'll notice that there are about 6 different service areas that are focused or highlighted in that welcome guide. We have structured our board so that we have representation from each of those 6 areas with the addition of legal services and community and government affairs, so that we have at least a couple of representatives from service groups in the community representing each of those service areas. As an extension of that, we've created what we call the Community Partners Program, where each board member is authorized to create their own task force of service groups in the community, also focusing on those areas as a way of creating an extended network of groups extending out from the board. You'll notice in all of that our board is not set up to provide actual services to veterans. Our purpose is to basically act as a coordinating body for other veteran groups in the community. And finally, let me say that we are very fortunate, and it's been an integral part of our success, to work very closely with the Medical Center and the Benefits Administration. We have a regional office here locally, and could not have accomplished what we had without a very good working relationship with Ms. Klinker and the rest of the staff here.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Great, thank you, guys. All right. There being nobody else waving hands or papers at the screen, we're going to move on with the rest of the suicide prevention slide. So the other big thing that we do is we train our volunteers and the staff that we have, so our case managers, to ask those hard questions. Obviously, that's something that we all talk about in every organization when we talk about suicide prevention, but when we started incorporating the volunteers and the veterans that are helping veterans, that really seems to have made a difference. It seems to have made an impact, and we get a lot more stories of that. You know what, he kept talking about how he was down, and I just asked him, hey man, are you thinking about hurting yourself? And he said, actually, you know what, I am. I think I've had some weird thoughts, I don't understand it, and we've been able to identify some cases where we could get them the assistance before they maybe, would have asked, or anybody would have caught it. So that's super important. Also, psycharmor.org we've been using down here to help train some of our volunteers and staff. Coincidentally, some of their sponsors are the Bob Woodruff Foundation, the National Veterans Intermediary, and the Wounded Warrior Project. Some of those we've heard about, or we've heard from earlier today.
Comcast.
And Comcast is a big one. And then, like I said, we try to give them purpose. We try to give them something to do, some way to help others. We try to get them involved, like, so with helping other vets. We have a good mentorship program down here, so we're tweaking it a little bit right now, but the more of those Vietnam-era veterans that, are retired and sitting home by themselves for weeks at a time that we can get involved with mentoring some of these young guys that are just coming out in a variety of different things, it gives everybody a battle buddy again and a sense of purpose. Can you advance this slide? Somebody? It's on Cajun.
It's on Cajun.
All right, well, we'll go to the next slide. So now I want to talk a little bit about immediate employment needs. So I say that when it comes to employment, we have an employment committee. We have, employment is one of the focuses of most the veteran organizations that were on these surveys. I see employment as a two-piece thing. So there's immediate employment, which, the guy needs a job yesterday because he can't pay his rent tomorrow. And that's what we're gonna talk about on this slide. The next one is underemployment. So he already has a job, but he still can't afford to pay his bills or live the way that he needs to, depending on where he's at. So with immediate employment, some of the things that we've done is we have a strong partnership with our state and county employment services. So down here it's called Career Source. In some other areas it's also called Career Source, other places Workforce Development or any number of other things. The relationship with them has been super important to us because they have a huge list of jobs that they need filled yesterday. They're not all skilled labor jobs, they're not all livable wage jobs, but they are at least income, and they're a great Band-Aid. Sometimes they're great careers for some of these vets, so we use them very thoroughly. They also have a lot of state funding to do resume writing and interview skills and a lot of the soft skills training that have been super important to us. We started to maintain a list of veteran-friendly, high-quantity employers. So employers that have thousands of employees and always have hundreds of vacancies, but they have a focus on veterans. So they advertise even that, hey, we want to hire veterans. We try to maintain a good relationship with them because, again, if somebody's in a more urgent need for employment, we can refer over to them. We do absolutely maintain a presence at almost all of the job fairs. There's down here, there's one at least once a week, if not more often, but we try to get to as many of those as we can to engage some of those veterans and share things with them. And then we have a program called Employer Partners. So basically what this is a company that has agreed that if we send them an applicant that meets the qualifications for a vacancy that they have, they're going to at least interview that applicant. So we signed a memorandum of understanding with them. We'll talk about those a little bit later, but these people, like I said, they're going to interview everybody that we send them that qualifies for a vacancy that they have, and that's been a really big deal. I've met very few people that apply online and actually get jobs today in 2018, so this is at least a foot in the door, at least somebody's going to talk to them, and that seems to have been helping. Some of the areas where we haven't been, or in the past, that we identified as weaker areas, and now we've fixed. A big one very early on was we were not screening these veterans as well as we should have been, or as well as we could have, I guess. So as veterans would come in looking for work, whatever quantity that was, we were sending them as a referral to these employer partners that we had, and we burned some bridges. So it turned out the employee didn't have any interviewing skills whatsoever. They didn't know how to dress for an interview. They, just the little things that we should have or could have identified and trained them on, we didn't. So obviously, I would highly encourage, if you're looking at that area, incorporate that as early as you can. If you can't do it yourself, say go to one of those state agencies and try and get them to do some of that training for you. The handoff process and everything that we do, again, because we don't provide most services, we do a lot of referrals and partnering. That handoff process was not as pretty in the beginning as it is today. So it's super important because we became known in the community. We got some negative feedback. There was a stigma that all we do is vets call us, we just pass them off to somebody else. That hurt us a lot. So, we've fixed a lot of that. We have a much better follow-up process. A lot of times we'll try and physically walk people in to hand them off, or at least while I've got the veteran in front of us, we'll call that other agency, hey, I'm sending John over. This is John. John, say hi. John, you're going to go talk to Mary. She's on the phone. She understands you're coming. And that's helped a lot of the situations out. Also, the livable wage. So South Florida is a little unique in that our cost of living is one of the highest in the country in comparison to our median wages. So the livable wage piece has become very, very important. There's a lot of jobs down here for minimum wage, but you can't even pay rent on minimum wage, let alone food and take care of your family and all of those things. So finding those livable wage jobs has been a big challenge, but it's a much larger focus of what we have going on now. And lastly, the flash to bang. So the time from when we initially talk to this veteran until the time that we actually get them to talk to an employer used to be a lot longer than it is today. And that's vital, again, because these immediate employment needs, they need a job yesterday. So now we get them, sometimes while we're sitting down with them, we'll get them connected to an employer, a group of employers, or it's a staffing agency or something like that right away. Did anybody else out in the community have any feedback specifically on immediate employment challenges or best practices?
This is Jacksonville again. Real quick, we have the founder and co-cohabitator of a employment project with the city government we'd like to share with you. I'm going to introduce General Mike Fleming.
Joe, thanks. In Jacksonville, we have something called the Jacksonville Military Veterans Coalition. Cajun actually attended one of our quarterly meetings, but we have over 450 companies that are part of that. I was with Deutsche Bank. We had something called Veterans on Wall Street, but we want to do something locally. And so we're in partnership with the city of Jacksonville. We have over 450 companies that are part of that have committed to hiring veterans. And it's a relatively straightforward process. We have some transition information. We have a number of things, but we found that the challenge for veterans was not that they didn't have enough information, they didn't have enough focused information. So we in Jacksonville want to do something specifically to draw veterans to come here to Jacksonville. So we have the Jacksonville Military Veterans Coalition, and we also have a kind of a sister website, the Northeast Florida Military Veteran College Network, to try to get veterans and families to come to get higher education in Jacksonville. And we're very willing to share all that information with anyone else.
Yeah, General, for the organization that is out there that wants to take a first step in moving towards building a network like this, or maybe it's just started, what would be one word of advice that you would give them to go about that?
I'd say get in contact with us. Yes. And we can, Ken Johnson, who's with the city of Jacksonville, is our partner, and we can take people through. I can send us to Cajun a information paper with the contact information and move that. We can, it's really, other cities can do it. It's almost, we've done the majority of the work and framed it out. The main thing is we're just to recruit local companies to be part of the coalition. It doesn't cost anything. Just need an entity that's going to be there forever to sponsor the website. We didn't want to have it sponsored by I was with Deutsche Bank at the time. I know eventually we'd all leave our jobs, so that's why we partnered with the city of Jacksonville for the employment website and the Jobs Coalition, and on the Veteran College Network, we've partnered with the Chamber of Commerce. So both of those entities are going to be there for a long time.
And then to your point, Stella, word of mouth has been very effective as well. The companies start talking, employees start talking, and Justin, at your vet gatherings, the vets start talking about it as well.
Yep, those are all great points.
Thank you.
And all right, so we will move on to anybody else? Nobody's waving arms? Great, we'll go on to the next slide. So I want to talk a little bit about the underemployment issue. So this is the veteran that has a job already and is putting nothing into savings. You know, they're a flat tire away from an emergency. So they need better employment, a lot of unique challenges to these vets because they can't go to career fairs because they have a job 9 to 5, and all the career fairs are Tuesday at 10:30 in the morning. Obviously, they can't ask off for to go there. They can't go to a lot of networking events because, again, it's either during work hours or it's immediate after work, and they can't afford childcare and those things. So this is a very large group that is not very well represented. They don't show up in unemployment rates, and getting them employed doesn't benefit a state agency that gets rated based off of employing the unemployed. So it's been a big challenge, but it's something that we really focus a lot of attention on. So we do a lot of networking events. We do them off hours. Some of my favorite networking events, specifically in this field, are that we'll invite maybe 10 CEOs or HR managers from large companies, and we'll invite 10 to 15 veterans that we know have gone through the soft skills training, that have done the resume writing, that they know their elevator pitch, they have all of that. And we'll do an event, usually hosted by one of those 10 companies, and it's nothing more than just wine and crackers. And we might have a guest speaker come talk for like 15 minutes about something, maybe a veteran that they've hired that's been very successful. But the next about 2 hours is just mingling and networking. And those events have been extremely, extremely productive. So a lot of those veterans it's an interview for the vets. I mean, the CEOs and the HR guys are absolutely interviewing everybody that's there. They're talking about vacancies they have, but it's not me sitting on this side of the table, you sitting on that side of the table, and it's not the scripted responses to the scripted questions and just going through the process. So it's been phenomenal. I've personally hired people through those programs because you really get to know the employee or the potential employee, the veteran, and they really get to know a little bit about the culture of the company. So those have been awesome. We also do a lot of soft skills training. We don't typically provide the training, so we partner up with other organizations here in the community that already provide those. and we'll facilitate or we'll co-host or anything like that. A lot of our large corporations have training programs like that, and they love to give that to veterans. So we'll do that, again, off hours, which not as many people care for, but it's what the veterans need that are in this situation. And then back to our mentoring program, we have specific mentors just for employment and just for, we call them success coaches. So typically they are some of those business leaders here in our community, HR professionals, anything like that, and they'll mentor these veterans on the soft skills stuff, on the resume writing, on networking into the right business, and they take it as a personal responsibility or a personal success/failure on whether or not that veteran gets hired. So of course that veteran gets hired somewhere. One of our more recent explorations has been into industry associations. So South Florida, one of our biggest industries down here, the two biggest really is the marine industry, so we're the yacht capital of the world, and the tourism industry. So the Marine Industry Association of South Florida is a group, an association of all of the different marine companies that are down here. Turns out they have an employment committee specifically to help find and people, ways that the marine industry can market their jobs out to the community. So when we came in and said that, hey, we want to do that for veterans, on the other side, they went nuts and they ate it up. So now they sit on our committees, we sit on their committees. We are actually doing a veteran-specific marine industry job fair in August. And then we're talking to the Aviation Association, the tourism board, about these same things. So that looks like it's going to be very productive. And again, a lot of these are skilled trades, and a lot of these are skills that a lot of our veterans have. So we're teaching the industries and those other employers how to read a veteran's resume, which is one of the biggest challenges I feel that most employers have. If you look at my resume, you wouldn't know that I've had more institutional leadership training than most CEOs in South Florida. And as a veteran, I don't know how to communicate that. I mean, obviously I do, but a lot of veterans, they don't know how to communicate what their actual skills are into a resume. The employers don't know how to read what they actually put on the resume, so there's no connection. So that's something that we're really trying to work towards serving down here. And then the employer education. That's a really big piece for us. There are a lot of stigmas, and I have a whole slide to talk about stigmas later, so we'll hold that until later. But there are a lot of stigmas about veterans that employers have, about veterans being more of a liability than an asset, and that veterans, they may go crazy, they may whatever, a lot of medical issues, or any number of different things, and there are employers out there, whether they'll admit it or not, that they don't give preference to veterans. They actually, try not to hire veterans if they can help it. Which I know sounds crazy, but it is what it is. And so we spend a lot of time trying to educate those employers on what skills and what assets veterans actually bring to their organization, some of the tax benefits, and some of the success stories, again, we try and celebrate of employers that have done very well and now almost primarily hire veterans once they actually figure the process out. One area that we could have probably focused better on in the beginning was that we were too focused on unemployment rates. So again, the unemployment rates don't track this underemployment issue at all. So the unemployment rates only track people that don't have a job and are currently looking for a job. So those veterans that gave up looking, they don't count in those numbers either. And those veterans that have a minimum wage job from a large corporation that maybe sells coffee or something that says they're going to hire 10 million veterans and they're going to pay a minimum wage to sweep the floors, that's where those veterans end up. And again, 2 or 3 months down the road, they're right back, seeking emergency services. So big area for us. I don't know if anybody else is focusing on that or looking at that, any other feedback, best practices, or challenges. All right, then we'll move right along.
Well, I'm curious, has anybody, separated the unemployment from the underemployment, in your veteran community? Yes, I see some heads saying yes. So what have you found? Is one, more of a challenge than another, or are you well managing both areas? If you are well managing, how are you doing that? What would be a best practice that you could share with someone who is just getting started in this or hasn't separated? How would they go about that? Any comments? Anything to share?
I saw you nod your head. There's cameras in those rooms.
Well, I am happy things are going so well for you. So,
All right.
well, we can always come back to a comment if I see
How you doing? Can you hear me? This is Brian Bilski from I'm in Jacksonville, but I'm actually from Orlando, and we have the same challenge with underemployment. Actually, in my real job, I actually work for Military One Source, so we support all active duty National Guard and Reserve service members in the state of Florida. And just as we recognize for the National Guard and Reserves, underemployment's a major issue and challenge. You know, one thing that we can provide with our active duty service members is education and training. So in Orlando, for instance, you know, partnering with a Valencia college, which has an advanced manufacturing association, which can provide, almost like you talk about soft skills, almost to part of that is they can provide advanced manufacturing certificates within 10 to 22 weeks, depending on the program. And we have a big employer, Lockheed Martin there in Orlando, which employs almost all of those graduates that come out. And the program graduate, you know, 95% of them have jobs that come out. So I like programs. And then once they're done with that 1 year or that first year of employment, what I like about Valencia's program is they want them to go back for additional training so that, you know, they can improve upon that initial job. And so, you know, it's usually $20 to $25 an hour, but I love the process of, hey, after that 1 year, gain more experience, go back to school and get a better, you know, opportunity. So I think looking at some of your schools and as General Fleming said, looking at some of your schools and maybe partnering with some of those that identify programs where they can get some advanced manufacturing or you know, voc rehab opportunities.
Brian, are you saying that a community should go to its industry base and its commercial base and have the educators in that community align to match education of the jobs to those versus creating all these degrees that nobody's got a job for? That's amazing.
I didn't say that. That was Joe. But thank you. You're doing a great job. Thank you.
Jim Lordsky, I do have a question, and specifically it's going out to Orlando or Central Florida. You have some of the large entertainment companies there, like Disney, and I know that there's 65,000 employees plus you have an individual there by the name of Kevin Preston, who's part of the HR recruiting strictly for military. Is that somewhat of a productive way, or is that just at the wage grade that's not really where we're looking to be? And I don't know how well you work. You said you're from Orlando. I don't know how well you know or work with Kevin Preston and bring him into the CVEB group. And I know some of the big ones like Disney are specifically hiring executive directors to do the recruitment of veterans to get into their corporation.
Actually, I do know Kevin. My prior job, I was in charge of transition for Marine Corps Wounded Warrior Regiment. So I was in charge of working with transitioning our service members from active duty, our wounded warriors for the Marine Corps. So I do know Kevin. Some of the challenges with Disney and you guys know down there in South Florida, the entertainment industry and tourism just doesn't pay very much at all. And so you're talking about, you know, the poor, you know, in Orlando's got the same challenge. We have a higher cost of living, and we are working with the Realtors Association, and that's kind of the challenge we have from a housing perspective, is finding affordable housing for the large, you know, industry or tourism industry workers that we have. And so I think, you know, even, Disney, if you go on their website and look at most of their jobs, you're talking $10 to $15 an hour. And so, but you need to have a skill. And same thing that we talked about when we were transitioning our severely wounded Marines. Hey, look, you need to develop a skill, whether it's going to college or get a voc rehab and that's why I like Valencia College, because they have a lot of programs that can get them into these, you know, maintenance, engineering type jobs or opportunities where they're paying a higher $20, $25 an hour wage. But finding you know, maybe an immediate job you were talking about just to get, you know, money coming in. But as you said, the underemployment is where it's really at.
Good points. Thank you.
Yeah.
And also to your point, involving the schools has been really important. So a lot of these veteran-specific or the industry-specific job fairs that we're putting together right now, that's what we're doing. So we have especially the tech schools that are in our area, that they can get these certificates and stuff that they need. And we've worked it out with some of these employers that if they have vacancies for, let's say, a outboard engine mechanic for yachts, they'll give that vacancy out at the job fair. And if you're not qualified for it because you don't have a certain certificate or something like that, but you meet all the other qualifications, that job will give them a job, or that employer will give them a job offer, contingent upon they go to one of these schools that we have over here on this side of the room. They sign up now and they get that certificate. The job will be waiting for them as soon as they get, have it in their hands. So that's been really helpful because, again, otherwise the veterans see the job listed on the website. I don't have that. I don't qualify. They move on to something else. And the things that they do qualify might not be what they really need. So it was a very easy partnership to broker between everybody. It's a win-win for everybody. But it wasn't happening before. So that's a great point to what you're talking about. Anybody else have anything that's going well or poorly in employment? All right, mediocre. Then we will go on to the next slide. The next one, I want to talk about housing. So we've already talked about a couple of these next topics, but housing has been a huge challenge for us, just like you were just saying in Orlando. Some of the things that have been working very well for us in South Florida with the housing and preventing homelessness, the SSVF grant, that we've gotten from the VA has been phenomenal. It's really a cornerstone of a lot of our housing solutions, specifically when it comes to the homeless veterans. Educating local law enforcement has been a big help to us. So getting them involved and having them know what our services are and what we can actually provide and who we can actually help. And then we give them our palm cards. So these palm cards, and I talked about it in our outreach slide, but we've got these little pocket-sized palm cards that have all of our pillars on one side, a cool little motivational message, and all our contact info on the other. These have been so important to getting awareness in the community about what we do. We have every sheriff, every police officer in our area, they carry a handful of these in their car. And if they meet veterans that are, having extra challenges or homeless veterans or anything like that, they're able to give those palm cards to them. They can call us, and then we can try to help them out the best we can. Landlord socials have been very productive for us as well. So like we were saying before, partnering with the realtor associations, we market those to them, and we do presentations at the realtor association meetings. But we also hold breakfasts with landlords, the landlord breakfast. We hold lunch and learns, we call them, with landlords and other realtors. So we bring as many of them out and we buy them all lunch. And we talk to them about some of our programs, see if we can get a couple landlords to agree to rent at a fair wage. And if we can get a couple realtors to work with us on selling homes to veterans, it's another big piece. And then we publicize. We celebrate the landlords that help us. So in all of our partnerships, be it employers, housing, whatever it is, we try and get as much positive media out there, celebration about that relationship as we can, because we've created a place that people want to be. So they know that if they're part of our program, we're doing great things already, but they want to be seen as a part of this program. So that helps us a lot when it goes out to try and, market or recruit new partners. And then we're also doing a lot of seminars. So our education committee and our housing committee work together, and they put on seminars. Some of them are first-time home buyer seminars. Some of them are credit building seminars to help them get to the first-time home buying seminars. But we also do, just like with the employment or the unemployment and underemployment issue, we also focus on the veterans that are already doing well, and we try to help them do even better. So we do some investing seminars, how to buy properties as an investment property and rent that out to hopefully other veterans, and hopefully make that a positive cash flow type business for them so they continue to do that. So we've got a lot of great feedback from that. It gets into the stigma stuff. We'll talk about it a little bit later, but we're trying to not be the provider of only emergency services. So we don't want to just be the 911 for veterans in South Florida. We want to be the everything for veterans in South Florida. So absolutely, we do the emergency services. We connect them to partners very, very well if they're about to get evicted or anything like that. But we also want to help all the other veterans to prevent that. So a lot of those cases, when they're in emergency need now, if we had just talked to them 6 months ago, we could have prevented that. So we're doing a lot of focus on that. Again, some of the other things, we probably could have done a little bit better before. Right when we were getting started, we didn't screen the veterans as best as we do now, or as good as we do now. So we sent some veterans into landlords that maybe weren't ready for that situation, or maybe their finances weren't as where they needed to be. So 3 months later, we see the exact same veteran again, but the next time we reach out to that landlord, they're not as interested in working with one of our people. So that was a big challenge for us. Again, we do a lot better job at that now. And we didn't in the beginning, again, just like with employment, sometimes we didn't screen them as well for other challenges they had going on. So, if they came in and they're about to get evicted, we put our housing committee on it and our, the staff for that and the SSBF grant and all of those things, and we helped them prevent eviction or got them into another place immediately, and that was a huge success. But we didn't also notice that maybe they were underemployed or maybe they had some sort of other issue going on underneath that just led to another failure in housing down the road. So that's another big piece of what we do now. And then communication between other providers in our area has become very important. So obviously none of us would assume that this would ever happen, but let's just say hypothetically there's a veteran out there that takes advantage of the system. If they learn that Mission United has money to help out with housing, then they'll come to Mission United to help out with housing. If that doesn't work out and they know that there's another organization on the other side of the county that helps out, we've found a few people every now and then that have been to a number of different providers now for mainly cash handouts, which we don't typically do anyway here, but we've opened the lines of communication with a lot of our other providers down here that provide similar services. And so we'll bounce names off of each other sometimes, or even just like situations, if it's PII type information. And we've been able to identify a couple of problem children here, and we pull them in to, evaluate what's really going on a little bit deeper. So, again, just the best practice. Anybody out there have any specific challenges or successes when it comes to housing?
Any comments or questions?
We'd like to hear too from the board in Atlanta, from the South Alabama Veterans Council. Bay Pines and Jacksonville have given some great input. We want to make sure that we're including everybody in the conversation, and given the fact that Fort Lauderdale and most of our other boards that are engaged this morning are in metropolitan areas, we want to ensure that these rural boards are also giving their take on what it is to serve veterans in their area and how they go about performing these specific functions when it comes to emotional crisis management, education, and jobs.
Somebody have a comment?
This is South Alabama Veterans Council. We partner with the folks here with the Alabama State folks, and we also for jobs, and they do a great job. They have a section that works just with the veterans, and they're a bunch of trained professionals, and we team with them to and support and help them with job fairs and everything in that light. As far as housing concerned, we have Eagles Landing for homeless vets, which is the Volunteers of America, and we work with them in homeless, and we also support we work with the VA on their program for what is it for where they get homeless vets into the homes, and so we work with a number of organizations that are existing within the community to work the issues on housing and unemployment and such.
And what are some of the challenges that you're dealing with in your area?
I don't know. It's mostly political issues that we have trying to get around the I can't get there from here syndromes, and people who want to think and do stuff outside the box and that they're not used to doing. I think that's probably the biggest problem.
Okay. And I think it's important to restate that all of our communities are different, and there's such strength in the diversity that we experience in each of our communities. So when we're sharing best practices or challenges, we're just hoping that there might be a nugget out there that maybe you can take away or lend if somebody states a challenge. And if you have something you think might lend to them, to try for that, to rectify that challenge, or, you know, some idea, then we welcome those types of comments as well. This is your conversation today and your opportunity. Since we don't gather like this on a regular basis, it's your opportunity to get some things out there and help each other a little bit. Any other comments?
There's a question in the chat. I'm not sure if it's related to this topic. They're asking how you keep negative and unwanted comments off the Facebook.
So there's a question in the chat, talking about earlier when we talked about Facebook groups, and says, how do you keep unwanted messages and negative messages off of a Facebook page? So the one that I manage, we've had 14 admins on it. Again, it's right around 2,000 veterans. So we're very diligent about maintaining that as a professional environment and keeping things that are on topic only to the page. Now, our page specifically, only veterans can see it. So it is a very safe environment, so we can share a lot of things that, you know, we wouldn't obviously share on some other pages.
Good point.
But we keep the garbage and the jokes and stuff to as little as possible, and then the negative stuff, you know, we handle right away and move it to the side. So, all right, so we've got about 20 minutes left. We will continue to move right along. We'll go on to the next slide. All right, so now we're going to talk about outreach. A lot of different CVEB members expressed outreach or awareness as one of their bigger challenges and an important piece that they wanted to focus on. So some of the things we've done down here for outreach that have been working very well. One, we're a program of the United Way. That's a fairly popular organization people have at least heard of, so that gives us a lot of credibility, as opposed to some of the smaller organizations that we have here in our community. It's a little bit harder for them to get into some doors. Our advisory board has been just crucial to this piece. So I talk a little bit later about volunteers. I think it's the next slide, and boards, and how we kind of target who we recruit to be on that board. But, you know, we bring in a lot of people that have already a huge public outreach themselves, and once we get them bought off on the program, then obviously they're going to go and share that with their community, and that helps a lot. That feeds right into the community partners. Same thing, we get them involved with our boards as early as we can, and we share their information, they share our information, and that works really well. The VA actually, so having close ties with the VA has been one of the bigger outreach methods that we've had that's been more successful. So a lot of our events that we do and a lot of our seminars that we teach, we do surveys. You know, how did you hear about this? How did you know, where did you first find out about this program? A huge percentage of that is through the VA. So we do a lot of flyers at the VA. We work very closely with the Public Affairs Office. Some doctors at the VA actually carry some of our flyers, and they have our information, and social workers, all of those things, because, you know, they too have gaps sometimes, or areas that they can't work on specifically, and maybe a local organization can do something a little bit quicker for them. I talked already about the palm cards. They're absolutely essential. Shoot me an email, I'll send you a copy of one, or Cajun maybe has one, I'll give them one. Those have worked out really, really well. The Mission United, just to the south of us, down in Miami-Dade, they have a program called Warrior Wednesday, and that has also been a very cool program in the community. So they do basically a seminar. They change the topic every month, so one Wednesday a month on average. They have a panel of speakers, typically it's veterans, talking about whatever the topic is. So it could be, you know, veteran business owners, or it could be just about anything you can think of, women veterans, you know, all the different topics. And they'll get 80 to 100 people to attend these events regularly. Really cool open dialogue. They record it, they stream it. Very neat events, very little overhead involved, but it really gets the community involved and spreads the awareness of their organization. Now, some of the things that we could have done, hindsight, a little better in the beginning. When we started, we tried to be the collection point or the calendar for everything veteran within driving range of where we are. Turns out when we publicize an event, people believe that it's our event, and if that event doesn't turn out amazing, our organization is represented poorly. So we've done a lot better job at vetting some of the organizations that we publicize events for. We don't necessarily push out everything, but we try to partner on as many of the ones that we know are legitimate as we can. In the beginning, we didn't do as much celebration of successes. We didn't talk as much about the stories that we had and all the veterans that we were helping and had gone on to do amazing things. We just continued to try and help other veterans. But that is very, very important in the community for them to see exactly what we're doing. Because they see that our 6 pillars, and they know that we have services, and we get grants, and we do all this amazing things on paper. But once they actually hear the story about John and how we got him out of living in his truck with his kids to a house and a job at UPS and going on to do phenomenal things, that has been a very big push for our community and has really helped publicize what we do to spread the awareness. And then also misinformation in the community. So double-edged sword. A lot of people in our community know about Mission United, and a lot of people know about some of the things that we do. But even more people believe that they know what Mission United does, and they're happy to share that information with the community. So we learned about this pretty quickly through when we started doing some of these focus groups, and we asked people, hey, do you know what Mission United does? Can you explain it to me? And a lot of the people believe that Mission United has some sort of magical pot of money, and if veterans come and they need anything, we'll just give them cash and to pay for whatever that may be. Now, obviously, nobody can afford to do that, and we don't have that pool of money, so when the veterans finally do hear about that and they come to Mission United and say, hey, I can't pay my electric bill this month because I leased a new car and I didn't plan for the payments to come out this month, or whatever it is, and we don't give them money to pay for that, now all of a sudden we're not taking care of vets, and we're not serving the community, and then it gives a lot of bad impression in the community. So that misinformation has been a big piece. Again, that's why part of why we did the palm cards. We've done talking points flyers that we give to a lot of our volunteers so that they can accurately represent what we're doing in the community and what services we actually offer. So we encourage people that if they don't know exactly what it is because they're maybe not daily involved, then try and send them to the website, try and send them to one of us that is actively involved, just network them to one of the board members. And that seems to be working really well.
And I'll add to that I had the privilege of being one of the founding co-chairs for our outreach effort for Mission United. We started all the other pillars first, and then we started, after we established the framework of what Mission United needed to be in service to our veteran community, then we started an outreach effort because we needed that branded message and that infrastructure first to support the intake as well as the message. The brand had to be established. And so I would encourage you, as you take a look at your organization, because we're all at different maturation points on what we do, to really establish that infrastructure and make sure that your brand is solid. You know exactly that doesn't mean it's not going to change, and it should change, and it should grow, and it should morph as you make assessment and as you grow your organization or as it needs assessment. But that will be driven by the intake of information from your veterans. And so be very intentional about what you're doing when it comes to outreach. And we learned a lot of great lessons and a lot of tough lessons along the way. So now we're in the process, 5 years in, of expanding, not rebranding, but expanding our brand because we are so well known for our crisis intervention to veterans that we want to expand that brand to include all veterans and a more holistic approach to who the veteran community is here in Broward County. And I'm going to leave you, before we go to comments, I wrote down something that Linda Davis said in her presentation. She said, what we can't buy is engagement and outreach. That's inclusive of outreach and what that brand looks like. And she said, we can't buy that. It has to be created. It has to be experienced. So with that said, we'll open up to comments, challenges, best practices when it comes to your outreach.
And what I'm going to do for you guys, instead of, we've got 10 minutes left, so I've got about 3 slides I want to get through. If anybody has anything that they want to bring up, you're more than welcome to, but we'll stop forcing people to speak until the end. So we'll get through these last 3 slides, try to do that in 10 minutes. Like I said, if you do have something that's pertinent to this specific topic that you don't want to wait till the end, please act funny in front of your camera and we will
Make sure you wave.
chime you in.
Justin, can I add?
Of course.
I'd like to point out that it's important to always think about meeting the veteran where they are. I think a lot of organizations are afraid to enter certain spaces because maybe it's unfamiliar to them, or they don't want to be perceived as supporting that type of behavior, whether it's a rehabilitation center or a bar. Sometimes that's where your veteran clients might be, and you might have to explore promoting your resources within those spaces. So just always consider that, and as far as, you know, whether you do Facebook, PSAs, you know, it's a multifaceted approach, and we really try to, again, just meet the veteran where they are through different streams of media, social or otherwise, and then that grassroots effort. There is that component where you need to have boots on the ground people in these organizations, whether it's the VA, the restaurants, the bars, the lodging associations. You really are going to need that volunteer presence with that unified message, so that you can bring that to the public and to the veterans you're trying to serve.
Yep, great point. And to that point, actually, so we've tried a lot of different events for, like I said, outreach, networking, those things. If I hold an event for financial planning, you know, I may get 10 veterans to show up. If I hold an event for networking over beers at a local bar, I may get 60 to 70 veterans to show up. Now, there's nothing saying that we can't do that in a back room at the bar, maybe not tell them ahead of time and do a financial planning presentation real quick there. But absolutely to your point, you know, we have to reach them where they are. We have to go to where they want to be and where they're comfortable. All right, so we'll move on to the next slide.
Hey, it's John in Atlanta.
Hey, John.
Hey, John.
Hey, I'm, you know, with Vetlanta, we're the CVEB here in Atlanta, and you know, one of the things we do really, really well here is our community outreach with our quarterly summits that we have. Cajun's been to them. I mean, we probably pull in 300 to 400 people on top of nonprofits, for-profits. Really, the foundation of our organization is for-profit, nonprofits, governmental agencies, both state, local, and federal, and colleges and universities. So we have an upcoming summit with our emphasis on this next one is community. The challenge we have is really outreach to the specific veterans, and we've actually, this has stemmed a lot of conversation in the room early on. I actually got goosebumps when the lady from Purdue started talking, because data is it's like food. You got to have it. So trust me, we're going to be cutting into that data and slicing and dicing some numbers. But one of the challenges we have is, how do we effectively partner with Georgia Veteran Service Organization, a state organization, along with the VA through our CVEB partnership, to actually find the veterans in Georgia and go about it to where we can communicate with them, not through snail mail, because Vetlanta we have no money. We are a club. We don't accept money. We don't want money, but we know how to do OPM, other people's money, which you got to get really good at that anyway. But the fact is, how do you reach those vets across the state of Georgia so you can impact them and get them to come here to the Mecca of Atlanta, where we can share this great information? And that is just a constant challenge, so we don't violate any laws and privacy and all that other good stuff.
I think someone mentioned it earlier. There's about 19 million veterans in the U.S., and someone said in the ballpark of 60 million family members of veterans. 50 million veteran family members that we've identified, and that might just be close relatives, maybe not the granddaughter and so on and so forth. But I think that part of your outreach strategy also needs to include the family members, because they're probably going to know a lot more about what's happening in their family member's life than the rest of us, even if they're seeking services. So in whatever outreach strategy you put together, you know, the family for us is also a very important medium of which to get our message through and to outreach to these veterans. And I think for us, that's been something that we've been trying to incorporate so that we can
again, just, they might not hear it if they hear it from us, but if they hear it from, their daughter, who's really concerned about their well-being, it might resonate a little bit better. So that's just one of the things we've been doing with our PSAs, through Cox Media Communication and iHeartRadio, trying to, maybe we're not touching the veteran directly, but we are touching a family member and somebody in their close support circle.
Another business tip I'll share with you, is unique to marketing specifically. So I have a horse, an equine business. So a barn we rent out so people can keep their horses there. About 3 years ago, I started a Facebook page called South Florida Horse Life. And it wasn't run by any, it's just me as an individual, no business affiliation, no nothing. And all I did was continuously post things that were funny about horses or horse information or whatever. And people found it, and they started adding their friends. They started sharing horses for sale. They started sharing everything. Now I've got about 7,000 or 8,000 people here in the local area in that group, and now I can market my business there like fish in a barrel. The same thing can be done with veteran organizations. Veterans have a lot of pride, right? So when it comes to the stigmas and those things, veterans don't want to reach out for help. They don't want to ask for help. And because of that, when we say, hey, we're doing this thing and we're the VA, come check it out, a lot of veterans just aren't going to go because they don't want to have that. They don't need help. They're good on their own. Same thing with nonprofit organizations. But if it's just a couple of guys put it together that are not affiliated and your organization just happens to be there or, anything like that, it works very, very well, at least in our area. So again, I have the Veterans of South Florida Facebook group. There's a ton of vets in there. I share Mission United stuff in there all the time. And when people in there reach out for help, I share them or I refer them over to Mission United. So if there was a Veterans of Georgia page or group and you had a bunch of veterans that are not on your staff, put that together for you, and they just started to add every veteran they know, and they added every veteran they know, it snowballs very, very quickly. And again, I understand not everybody's on Facebook, but it is a phenomenal outlet. We have the same challenge. Where's that choke point? Where is the place that all veterans go through that we can touch them very easily? We can't get a list for whatever reason from DOD as these guys get out of the military. I know that the VA can't give it to us because of medical information. So we have to figure out something. And most of them have a need or a want to network and socialize with other veterans. And so that's a big area that we focus on.
Justin, we're working that issue as the VA, and that is the transition. Everyone when they leave an active duty takes the TAPS program, got that. But we're working very diligently with DOD and the VA so that as a person, and here this world of optimum odds, I guess I could call it, but what we're looking at to be the ultimate, when a person is leaving active duty, whether retirement, PCS, ETS, whatever, and they're leaving, that they're going to be going through their disability exam. So on the day that they leave service, they already have their disability percentage. What a great world that would be. And they're leaving active duty with their 214 in hand, going to a community. It's, oh, by the way, we've already called up that community. People like you who are going to call up and say, you and Stella, and say, hey, an email, this person's coming to the community. Reach out to them, see what they need. Real estate, job, whatever. Welcome them in. That's the world that we're seeking to go to, and we're not that far off from it.
That's a total game changer.
The post office does it.
We're getting there.
We in the Vet Center program have always advocated that although we're part of the VA, we are not, we don't quite have the stigma of the VA that some of the large clinics and hospital situations have. And we are trying very hard to advocate for send us the DD-214 for everybody who comes into Broward County, because we do that's what we do. We do outreach for the VA, and we can then refer. And it's such a, there's 300 vet centers around the country. They're already sitting there. And we're out struggling trying to find veterans too, just like you guys are, and, just we can help them get hooked up with the VA for health care. We can send them to you guys if they're needing housing. It's an asset that's sitting there.
But you guys have a VA email address.
I know.
You're part of the VA. Yeah, I mean, in the eyes of the veteran in the community, you're part of the VA.
But we don't email with veterans. I'm talking about a phone call.
Don't get me wrong, I love the VA.
I know,
especially down here.
I know you, Justin.
Let me throw you one other idea. You're in the Atlanta area. I have several clients for my business, Bolt Consulting, that I'm in and out of there to do work with. And I take advantage of the state chamber. It's right downtown all the time. And they have a whole veteran outreach initiative. I would visit the Chamber of Commerce. It's a Georgia State Chamber right there in downtown Atlanta, and they could partner with you as well to reach out.
Well, I also know, so I don't know who mentioned it. I know the Georgia State Veteran Services, for every person that their home of record is Georgia, that is getting out of the military, their DD-214 goes to Georgia Veteran Services, and they know who's coming. Now, it's home of record, so they may not be coming home to Georgia, but the fact remains they do get the DD-214, and they know their estimate right now is we have about 1,500 veterans that come into Georgia every month looking for work. So I actually work for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation in Washington, hiring our heroes, so that's my day job. So yeah, I think maybe tapping into the local chamber. And it's really trying to, the hard part about this is because we're all volunteers doing this, it's finding the time to kind of connect the dots with the chamber, with the state, with the federal side, and trying to figure out how do you wrestle this thing down to get contact so we can make contact with these folks. Because I find it amazing, even today, people don't know what the VA provides. I know what they're doing when they're going through TAP, like the gentleman said over here. What they're focusing on TAP is they want their clearing papers signed so they can get out. That's all they care about.
Yep.
I've been
John,
there, done that. So,
What you just defined, John, is a
say
CVEB.
again?
What you just defined in your sentences just prior, that's a CVEB. That's the community.
Oh, yeah.
That's what everyone is doing.
Oh,
And
yeah.
You just defined it right for us.
Yep.
All right, I'm gonna race through these last couple of slides before I get kicked out of here. But when it comes to volunteers and boards, the most important thing that we've found has been to include the ask. So we built a very large board, a very large community, and for a while we told them a lot about what we were doing, but we didn't ask them to do anything for us. Once we started asking them to do things, they got really excited and they loved to do things for us, and it kept them more involved and it kept them coming back. This slide here is about partnering and community building. These are some of the different partners that we've developed for our different pillars that have been, instrumental in what we do. So like in the legal, we partnered up with Legal Aid of Broward County. We currently have over 400 attorneys just in this county that have agreed to take on pro bono legal cases for us, for veterans. So it's phenomenal partners that we've done there. So we sign MOUs with our partners so that we can very clearly outline the expectations from them and from us to them. And that helps, keep them involved again, and helps keep both of us honest and participating. Next slide. This slide talks about the veteran narrative and the veteran stigma. This is one that's real near and dear to my heart, because of the way the media is, like we talked about before. They really prefer to talk about the negative aspects of being a veteran and all the things that out there about veterans, veteran employment, going to school, all of those things. They don't very often celebrate the successes or the positives of being a veteran. And so we try to do that locally. We try to do that through our local media. We get on the radio regularly with a couple of different stations. They're willing to bring on a vet once a month or twice a month that's looking for work and talk about their story, or celebrate some of the successes we've had. That's been working very well. The whole asset versus liability thing is normally part of my message. In the beginning, we really tailored our messaging towards donors. So we really focused a lot more on talking about all the phenomenal things that we were doing in the community, and or all of the emergency needs that existed in the community, is what I should say. So we talked a lot about, just like the video you see for the Humane Society, the shaking dog in the cage. That was what a lot of the advertising was when we first got started, because we needed money, we needed people to support veterans and help veterans. But it turns out that all of that type of marketing actually does a lot more harm in my eyes than good, because it promotes that all veterans are addicted to drugs and can't hold a job, and they're going to freak out, they're going to all these things. Obviously, that's not the case. I understand that, especially from the nonprofits, that is a piece, and it has to be included somewhere, because you need the donor money, and I get it completely. But we also need to spend at least as much time, if not more, celebrating the positives and the successes of the veterans that are out there.
And if I could just end with one comment as well, we spent a lot of time talking about some individual needs of services for our veterans, I think, which are all extremely important. But we can't neglect, as you move forward, the infrastructure, and be very intentional also about building that infrastructure, building your volunteers, taking time to invest in them in their leadership skills, do some volunteer development, orientation, and do a self-assessment on how you're performing as a board or an advisory council or however you're structured. Go through that assessment process on a regular basis so that the performance for all of this work will get done and move forward if you're in constant communication and development as the leaders organizing and moving these agendas forward. A strong strategic plan is necessary as you build your leadership around that. So.
And my ask from the Veteran Engagement Board and the Veteran Experience Office would be that there's some sort of forum that all of us can share this kind of information, some sort of communication platform other than 145 people on an email chain. If there was a place that we could upload these slides and that people could ask, hey, what are you guys doing for community involvement, for community engagement? And if we could share, hey, here's what we've been doing, here's a slide, here's a picture, and other people could do the same, you know, one gathering point of all that stuff, that would be amazing.
We do have a website as a community engagement part of VEO. We could look into making that broader. You know, once again, we're new.
I get it.
And in all honesty, we relaunched ourselves on 1 October after we started in 2015. 1 October, we have this new format and good words of advice. This is why we love listening to these networking events, and we'll take action to see how we can try to get a better open forum.
And I just want to say kudos to all of you serving our veterans.
Yeah, so we are very close, if not over time. I want to be respectful of the rest of your day. There are a couple of things I do want to cover, though. First, thank you everyone out there for your time and your support. At one point, we were well over 200 engaged on this, and that includes some groups that are anywhere from 4 to 18 people sitting in a room. So who knows how many we had today. This is the end of the beginning. This is the time when we initially see each other's faces. We talk about some of the things that we're proud of. We talk about some of the things that are challenging us. And we get ideas from colleagues and other veterans advocates in different areas that can assist us in helping veterans. So Justin hit it on the head. We need a forum for the Southeast CVEB leadership to be able to blog and be able to talk quickly back and forth and share documents. The VA cannot provide that. You know, we have specific rules and regulations. But Justin seems to already have done that. That's right. Sure. So this is the end of the beginning. We now can start the next phase of that. And that is open and sharing communication to develop trusted relationships, not only between colleagues who have volunteered their time and their efforts to serve on and lead these veterans engagement boards, but also others that would like to be a part of the concerted effort and the partnership in individual communities. So I want to thank Tony Davis, who is at the Jacksonville location. Tony went out to Cisco and began this on his own, basically. That was when the Veterans Experience Office was very young, 5 or 6 months old, and 24 employees. Tony Davis somehow got Cisco, this probably billion-dollar corporation, to give free space and their capabilities in conducting these telepresence events for the North Atlantic District networking event. At that time, Jim Worski was the only executive director because that's all there was North Carolina to Maine Veterans Experience Office. And we were building the airplane in flight, and Tony Davis went out and figured out how we partner with private industry to provide teleconferences that would be a positive impact on our communities and bring people together. So I always want to remember him because he's the one that started this. We're getting a little better at it. We're learning lessons as we go along. It's not about us, though. It's about you and the value that you draw out of this. And lastly, I want to thank Cisco. You guys have been an amazing partner. You give us these facilities. You make fair. We have refreshments. And just you know, the outpouring of support, that you've given us, you know, in trying to take care of veterans. I can't say enough about what you've done, not only for the VA, but for our community partners. And none of this would be possible without you. We could not dial into details from our VA facilities without you providing this platform. We would not be sitting in this room, enjoying each other's fellowship and, you know, getting with like-minded people if it wasn't for you. So thank you.
We appreciate it. It's the least we can do, right? We thank you for your service and for the things that you're doing for the vets, and obviously all the things that the vets do for our country. So,
and lastly, I'm over time, so I'd like to turn it over to retired Army Colonel James Worski to close us out. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Just in a couple of minutes, Eric, once again, as the Executive Director for Community Engagement, thank you very much, and thank you for Cisco for hosting this. I much appreciate our VA partners. Paul, thank you, everyone who's working for the VA.
Welcome.
Thank you all for being here. But mostly important, thank you to the communities and all the 501c3s, as I'm surrounded by a bunch of great people here in Fort Lauderdale, but of course the Southeast is a networking event was going on in Atlanta, South Alabama, Jacksonville. We had it up in Bay Pines too, where we had our representatives there. So thank you all for participating. But the biggest point that I can make out is the VA can't do it alone. We need the partnership. We need to take care of our veterans, and together, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to become that force multiplier, and we're going to take care of our veterans in whatever way they want. So thank you all. Thank you all for co-chairing and actually leading this discussion from Fort Lauderdale, and appreciate everyone's time. Drive safely, be careful, see you soon. Thank you.
Online data tool that's been developed by two entities here at Purdue University, and I should be able to move forward. There we go.
Kathy, this is
Yes.
Cajun. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I want to make sure at the front, you're not sharing individual video. Do you intend to, or is that on purpose? So we can see your slide presentation, we just can't see you.
No, it was just to actually share the screen.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. So the Military Family Research Institute at Purdue University, where I work, we conduct research on military and veteran family experiences and their work with communities, sharing policies, programs, and procedures. And then the Purdue Center for Regional Development really is the mapping tool and the economic data behind a lot of what's on the Measuring Communities site. So two institutes at Purdue came together to create Measuring Communities. And so in terms of the community or the veteran engagement boards, we know that you want to identify goals at the local level, improve service delivery for veterans, families, caregivers, and survivors. So in your work, you look at the people within that you're working with, along with places. And Measuring Communities really kind of helps you do both. So looking at people in terms of changing their behaviors and their knowledge about working with veterans in this population, but also about places. And so the places can do a better job of supporting and serving military and veteran families. We know that you take two veterans and you look at their DD-214 and they look exactly the same, but you put one in Boston, Massachusetts, and you put the other one in Mississippi, and even though they look the same on paper, based on the places in which they live, their experiences might be very, very different. So Measuring Communities focuses not only on people, but places as well. So in your work, we do know that in working in communities, what do you focus on? How do you know? What should be focused on? What are you doing okay in and may not need as much of attention? And to accurately understand the community characteristics that might shape, hinder, or facilitate your efforts. We know when we work with community members, we have very passionate people. They have a tendency sometimes to be passionate about one particular topic, and without information to help support what organizations are going to do, sometimes those passionate people may lead groups in directions that may not necessarily be the right way to go. So we know this is something difficult to do, but that's why Measuring Communities was developed. So when we look at service members and veterans and their families, we know that they're embedded within lots of different systems within the community, whether it's mental health, whether it's healthcare, whether it's education. We know that that service member and that family is embedded in all of these systems. So we know our CVEB members, they connect with other community stakeholders who are interested in serving veterans and families, and I caught a little bit on the NVI a presentation where they talked about the stakeholders within your community and this need to collaborate, working with others, the collective impact to improve these outcomes for veterans where they live, where they work, and where they raise their family, And so needing the tools to kind of learn about this landscape and the evolving needs of veterans and families within these geographic areas. So measuring communities is one of these tools to help you connect, collaborate, and use the tool. So our website is Measuring Communities, Mapping Progress for Military and Veteran Families. And what it really is a tool for learning about the military and veteran relevant characteristics of geographic areas that you choose. We have data for all 3,142 counties in the United States, and it's sometimes Puerto Rico and the other territories. You can use the tool to actually learn how communities are changing. We have a lot of historical data on that, so you can see what the unemployment rate has been for a certain age veteran over the course of 4 or 5 years. Are you getting better? Do you have peaks and valleys? What might be happening to that? You can also compare communities that are similar to yourself. So what are communities like yours doing? Where do they benchmark against yours? And with help, you can map your status and your progress. So knowing what you have been doing, you could take a look to see if you're, quote, moving the needle on any particular issue that you're working on. So within the Measuring Communities site, we have data in 10 different domains, and a lot of these are very similar to the community blueprint and other community mobilization efforts across the country. So you can see the icons here, everything from K through 12 education to finance to community to demographics and legal, and the icons pretty much are self-explanatory. So in each domain, there are several indicators or statistics that are readily available. And these data sets really come from a lot of multiple governmental agencies, and so a lot of it can be open source that you can go find yourself, but we put it together so you can actually look at multiple indicators or multiple statistics at one time. They include the most recent data that currently available, but depending upon the data source and when it's published, it may be a year or so behind. So, for example, the VA just published their new population data this past month, but that was 2017 data. We don't have 2018 data. So it is the most currently available. Every time a data source gets published in terms of updated, we go in and within a month we actually update all of the indicators that are based on that data source. We do add indicators regularly depending upon what are the needs of the users and other things that might be of interest to those using the site. And they deal both with the veteran characteristics and the general community characteristics. So a lot of times you'll see information about veteran unemployment or veteran poverty, and you're given a number. So for example, maybe in an area, the unemployment rate for veterans 18 to 34 is 17%, and oh my gosh, isn't that awful? Yes, that is. That's not a good number. But you also have to take a look at the civilian characteristics within that community to find out how the veterans really are in comparison to their civilian counterparts. So maybe in that community, the civilian unemployment rate for that same age group is 25%. So in that community, veterans are actually doing better than their civilian counterparts. Or on the other end of the spectrum, if the civilian unemployment rate for veterans 18 to 34 is 7% and the veteran rate is 17%, then yes, veteran unemployment rate for these very young veterans might be something that the community really wants to take a look at. So in a lot of our indicators, we have not only the veteran numbers, but there's civilian numbers as well, so you can make comparisons to really understand the context of where the veterans are as compared to their civilian counterparts. So what can the tool help you do? You can look up and download data for geographic areas of your choosing. You can make it up. You can make up one county. You can make up multiple counties. Maybe your organization has a catchment area, so you can actually pick your geographic area. We've got the ability to do custom maps, tables, graphs, all depending upon what you select. There are state and county snapshots. So if you're going out and trying to recruit folks for your CVEBs, you're trying to establish something new and you really don't necessarily know what you don't know, these snapshots are really great. 3 steps, click here, click here, click here, and you have a document that you can go ahead and share about the veteran characteristics within the state or within your county to people who may not necessarily have any idea of the veteran characteristics in your geographic area. You can create simple indices to identify areas of strength or concern. So that would be kind of assigning a criteria score for a certain point at certain levels. So if you're looking at poverty, is the veteran poverty greater than the civilian poverty rate, under, is it against the state median? Whatever you happen to decide, so you can actually create simple indices to understand where areas of concern are. You can combine the measuring communities data with your own organizational specific data to create documents depending upon what you need. So I actually have an example here where we had a veteran service officer in Indiana, and they were trying to advocate for additional resources for their work. So the places within, and this is a document that he shared that he created, where the yellow arrows are, that's information that he pulled from the Measuring Communities website. The others are information that he had within his office, but you can see a good majority of the information here was pulled from the Measuring Communities tool, combined with what he had within his office to create this document for budget hearings. So how can you apply the Measuring Communities tool? You can identify gaps in support that are actionable at the state and local level. Where are the needs? You can use the gaps to build or adjust services to better meet the needs of the customer. Are we targeting the population that we think we should be targeting? Are our programs necessary in this geographic area? You can use the data to measure how your community or your service area is doing as compared to the state or national averages. How are we doing compared to everybody else? Is this something we need to be paying attention to? You can use the civilian data to compare how veterans are doing relative to their civilian counterparts. So again, this is that how are the veterans doing as compared to comparable civilians, and this is an important piece. And you can also drill down further to get more detailed picture of any particular domain indicators such as veteran demographics and things like that. So there's a lot of applications within this tool of things that you can do. So when you actually log in, and the website is listed at the top here, up in the upper right-hand corner, you can actually see where you have a login. And I have on the right side of the slide here, this is the CVEB login. So you can actually log in. You already have an account. You don't have to fill in any of this information below. So NAMYVA17, that is your login. So you already have access to this tool. When you enter the site, you actually can enter 3 different ways. So at the very top, explore by topic, there are the 10 different domains that you can choose if you want specific information on housing or behavioral health or finance or medical care. At the bottom, that gold box in the middle, that's the state and county snapshots. You actually can just click that on and you can get to the snapshots. The box on the far left on the bottom, the master map, this is the most complicated, for lack of a better term, section of the website because it actually has all of the topics. So we actually encourage you to go and actually look at 1 or 2 specific topics first and learn how to use the map before you actually enter the master map, where you actually can compare domains against each other. But there are 3 different ways to enter the site. So one of the quickest ways to get data is this state and county snapshot that I've been talking about. It's a standardized look at selected state or county level. So if you actually have multiple counties that you work in, all of these reports will be very similar in nature, but obviously the data that is pulled from the site is going to be different. But at this point, it takes just 3 clicks to generate the report. So you can take this, you can print it off, you can save it as a PDF, and actually take these with you to when you go to different areas so people can begin to understand some of these veteran characteristics within their individual counties. So we can take a look at one example just in terms of what kind of information you can get. And so one of the questions that we kind of get is, how does this disabled veteran population look like in my counties compared to neighboring counties? So I actually have, I believe this is actually Illinois, but you can use the medical domain to find the disability table. So we have veteran disability ratings. You can select your indicators and then select your state in the data fields, and then check the counties that you wish to view and the current year, and you can create a table. So this 1 through 6 is really step-by-step. Click here, select this, and then this is actually what you get when you update the table. Now, if it has a blank here, that means there's not enough information or there are no recorded folks within these disability ratings. A lot of times these are estimates, so with a margin of error, there may not actually be any within that particular disability rating. So you have a table. You can download the entire table, you can download selected fields, and you can begin to create your own customized spreadsheets, because it does download an Excel spreadsheet, and then you can begin to do calculations based on what is the state average, what is the ratio, lots of different things you can do with this data. You can also graph it and make your own, actually here you can actually combine with veteran population, and then you can create visuals. So I actually have that here. So you can take all the data from the spreadsheets and you actually can look at veteran disability ratings. So you see the counties here and the total number of veterans within that county. We've got Clay and Edwards and Richland and Wayne, but you can see with these red arrows, okay, these might be areas of concern in terms of it's a much higher percentage than all the other counties. But then here, within the green, and there's also one here in Richland, that we don't have veterans of this particular disability, so that may be something else that you can take a look at. But when you graph it visually like this, you pull the data, create your visuals, and that also can help you in terms of where you are, in this particular case, the veteran disability rating and how you compare to neighboring counties. So that's actually just one example of how you can use the data that's on Measuring Communities. So we do have an online report that provides kind of this national look at the state of military and veteran families. You can download the report. It is on the website. There is an enhanced report that you can take a look at that actually when you go into a page, there are hyperlinks here on these gold bars that actually bring up more information and more visuals. So we actually encourage you to go look at the enhanced report. So that's just a really very, very brief tour. And so I would go ahead and welcome your questions and comments.
This is Cajun at Fort Lauderdale, Veterans Experience Office and VA colleagues. Do you have any questions from your individuals in attendance at respective locations?
This is Atlanta calling. We would love to see, if possible, Kathy, we'd love to see some sort of brief demo. Is that possible?
Not within the timeline that I am under right now, but I do have a basically recorded webinar that takes you step by step and actually provides some scenarios. Excuse me. The one thing is that we've updated our mapping technology so it won't match exactly, but if you can give Cajun or Tony your email, I can most definitely send you the link and the PowerPoint slides, which is basically a tutorial for you.
Thank you.
I just started playing with it, maybe.
Yeah, this is Matthew in Atlanta. I did have one quick question, a technical question. And with this map, you said there's a customizable function. So, for example, is it just the county, just the state, or for the Atlanta area, for example, the Atlanta MSA covers 27 counties. Can I go in there and create a customized map of saying this is what all 27 counties look like and just cluster that?
It can, depending upon which indicators you select. So indicators can be at state level, they can be at county level, and there is a charting tool within the map, and you can actually create boundaries and then pull up bar charts with those particular counties. So there is customizable map features on there.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
I think I saw one comment about what is the cost that came through. There is no cost at this time for use of the site.
All right, this is Cajun. Any other questions before we move on?
Thanks to the Boilermakers.
Hey, Kathy, excellent presentation, really well received. There's a lot of buzz in the room here, and I'm sure there is in others, regarding the information that you've delivered and the capabilities of some of this, the system and some of the information that you've been able to put together is going to really, I believe, assist these individuals in serving their communities better. So thank you very much for your time and for an excellent presentation to our Veterans Engagement Board's community leaders and partners around the United States and the Southeast.
You're quite welcome. I've got multiple questions about providing the link. Cajun and Tony, I will just go ahead and send that to you right away, so then you can disseminate it as needed.
Sounds great, ma'am. Thank you very much. We are going to move on and talk about the Rapid Appeals Modernization Program. Mr. Pedro Rivera Batista, who is a Senior Executive Assistant at the Appeals Management Center in Washington, D.C., is going to provide you with some information regarding a program that the Veterans Benefits Administration has fielded to more rapidly deal with the growing appeals backlog of veterans claims. Mr. Rivera?
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. We're good to go. Thank you.
Awesome. And are you guys able to see the presentation?
We are, sir. Go ahead and turn it into a slideshow so that it covers the whole screen, and we should be ready to go.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone, for having me this morning. On behalf of our Deputy Director, Brianne Ogilvy, she got called into a preparation meeting the last minute at the department. As Cajun said, my name is Pedro Rivera. I work at the Appeals Management Office in Washington, D.C. And as most of you probably have heard, VBA started a new campaign to finally resolve the ongoing issues that we've been having for decades now with the appeals process in terms of claims for benefits. To give you a very quick understanding of how this happened, back in 2016, when VBA finally was able to get a hold and control the rapidly increasing numbers of VA claims, then as a result of processing more and more claims, then we started receiving more and more appeals. Veterans who disagreed with the decisions that they received from VBA. The appeals process is widely known that is so complex, so very hard to understand. It takes so long that it was easy to understand that needed to be revamped. In 2016, a lot of SMEs were called from the Board of the Veterans Appeals and the Veterans Benefits Administration, and they got together to, also with stakeholders, VSOs, and other partners, to come up with what we thought, or we're hoping that it will be a solution to the appeals process long time issues. As we move along to slide number 2, you'll see how the appeals inventory has grown over the years.
Hey, Pedro, this is Cajun. Sorry to interrupt. Can you please turn it into a slide presentation so that it will go full screen?
Okay. How about now?
Perfect. Thank you, sir.
All righty. Sorry about that. So from 2001, when we had just under 100,000 pending appeals, as of FY17 had multiplied 350% to over 450,000 appeals. Needless to say, it was a no-brainer. We had to address this issue rapidly. Some of the more common issues that everyone agree we were facing in terms of the appeals process was that it took too long. An appeal under the current process, or as we call it, the legacy process, could take anywhere between 3 to 7 years, and in some cases, even a decade. Additionally, everyone agrees that the process was really, really complex. Veterans were very confused about their rights, about their process, about the timelines, some of the deadlines that they had to submit evidence, et cetera, et cetera. So those two, the time that it took to process an appeal beginning to end, and the complexity of it, those two were the main reasons and the main factors that we tried to address with the new Appeals Modernization Act. This is a flow chart. I think it speaks for itself. It shows the current legacy appeals process. In here, if I could ask you to look at the top right-hand corner where you see the key or the legend. So it explains everywhere where you see a little circle, that's a point in the process where a veteran will receive what we call duty to assist. And for the most part, what this means is that a veteran will have a length of time to answer back to whatever communication he or she received. This could be a 30-day or 60-day lapse in the process to await for the veteran to respond. Also, the orange or peach color squares, we call those appeals churn. Those are steps in the process where the veteran answering back to us could very easily send the process backwards, and in some instances to start from the beginning. Blue squares represent moments where in the process we make a decision. And again, every time that VA makes a decision for claims for benefit, in this case an appeal, the veteran has the right to disagree. So potentially the process could go back to square one. This flow chart is widely known, and it clearly shows how complex and the process is. In August 23rd of 2017, the Veterans Appeals Improvement and Modernization Act was signed into law. What this did for us is that it finally gave us the front end of the priorities within VA to address this problem. It gave us the resources, it gave us the priority that we needed to address this ongoing problem, and it brought to light the three suggestions, the three recommendations that we are incorporating into the new process. We are incorporating what we call it higher level review at the VBA level, which means that the veteran chooses this lane in order to have a new review cover to cover, from the beginning to the end, using the evidence that is on the record. And that's the key factor for this lane, is that no new evidence is taken in consideration for a higher level review. It's just an overall review by a much more experienced adjudicator of the evidence that is in record, and a decision is made to whether make a new decision or uphold the previous decision. In terms of the supplemental claim provides the veteran an opportunity to introduce new evidence. Perhaps during the appeals process it's noted that new evidence would help resolve the claim or the appeal on behalf of the veteran. And in these cases, the supplemental claim proves to be the best lane for the veteran to address the appeal. If we are not able to address the veteran's case within VBA using a higher level review or a supplemental claim, then the veteran has always the option to also send their appeal directly to the Board of Veterans Appeals, and that being the third option that we are extending for veterans. Keeping in mind that all these three options are to be handled in much faster fashion. Here you can see the 3 lanes explained more thoroughly. The 2 lanes that are under the umbrella of us at VBA, and then the 1 lane that is handled by the Board of Veterans Appeals. The 2 lanes within VBA are being handled on average in less than 125 days, and the 1 lane that is at the Board of Veterans Appeals is handled in a year or less. And even with these timelines of up to a year at the board, it's still a great improvement from the 3 to 7 years on average. This is the comparison. This is the new flow chart for the process that we are introducing. If you follow with me on the left side of the slide, the veteran comes into VBA with their claim. A decision is rendered, at which point, if the veteran does not agree with that decision, they have potentially 3 options to choose. As I just explained, the higher level review, which takes a brand new look at the evidence on record, and it renders a new decision within 125 days or less. A supplemental claim, just in case that the veteran likes to introduce new evidence to support their case, and those claims are also handled in about 125 days. And lastly, if the veteran chooses to bypass VBA and go directly to the board, they can also do it as well, and those cases are being handled in about 365 days. At each point, if you notice, there are green arrows pointing that after each decision, if the veteran still doesn't agree with that second decision, they can go to another lane and perhaps present their case in using that other lane's criteria. So, for example, the veteran chooses the higher level review first, and within 4 months on average, they get a decision. That decision is still not what the veteran feels is right for him or her. Then they have the 1 year to then apply to go into the supplemental claim and perhaps introduce more evidence. We will then decide that supplemental claim within 3 or 4 months again. And yet again, if the veteran still does not agree with the decision on that supplemental claim, then they have the option to go back to the higher level review or just take it up a notch and go to the appeals, to the Board of Veterans Appeals. People often ask us, so what is so different if the veteran can continue to jump from one lane to the next, potentially, forever? And the answer is very simple, but it does make sense. Just the fact that the veteran is able to receive a decision much quicker, it has proven to satisfy many veterans a great deal. We often hear that veterans, after waiting 3, 5, 7 years, 10 years, to then receive a letter saying your appeal was denied for these reasons, we often hear, well, gosh, I wish you would have told me this 7 years ago, and I would have done X, Y, or Z. I would have gone in a different direction. So just the fact that they are receiving much quicker decisions, that alone has proven to be extremely well received by many veterans. Also, the new lanes, higher level review,
Pedro, this is Cajun. We seem to have lost audio. We're going to give it just a minute here. Does anyone have any questions regarding what has been covered so far for the Rapid Appeals Modernization Program by the Veterans Benefits Administration?
Except for the fact that it doesn't start until 2019.
Yeah. So with no questions, and if I don't get Pedro back within about the next minute, well, it looks like he is reconnecting. So we're going to hold for a second. There may be some dead air while we hold on for him. In about a minute or 90 seconds, we're going to transition into the CVEB best practices. Panel. All right, you back?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Let's advance those slides to current, and we'll go ahead and continue to end. Thank you, sir.
I apologize for that. Let's see, where were we? I believe we were on this slide explaining the new flow chart, which is significantly easier to look at than this one. So much faster decisions with higher quality of experienced adjudicators looking at the evidence of record or the new evidence being introduced, and veterans have the choices to select which lane they want their appeal to be processed. And at any point, if they receive a decision on these new lanes, they have the right to apply to go to an alternate lane, ultimately going to the board and eventually, if they choose to, go to the Court of Appeals for a review of their case. The new process, these are some of the higher level benefits that we drafted based on our communications with veteran service organizations. Simply put, a much faster decision. Veteran receives a better notice that explains why the decision was made, and also what things they could do to either present their case in a different way or include additional evidence that will help them get the benefits that they feel they have earned. The Rapid Appeals Modernization Program. So what I just explained to you guys is the Appeals Modernization Plan as a whole. As often happens either in the military or in the federal government, we try to test those plans before we roll them out. And as such, we created the Rapid or Appeals Modernization Program, the RAMP program, and it's a pilot test of those improvements that we are making to the process. We rolled out RAMP at specific stations, at specific states, and we've been monitoring the progress of those new changes into the appeals process. We've been collecting data, and we've been communicating with our VSO partners, getting their feedback. And along the way, since since November of last year, when we rolled out RAMP, we've been making tweaks and corrections to the process as we had initially drafted it. Right now, we feel very, very comfortable that the process, the new process as we have it designed, looks really, really good in terms of helping a lot of veterans get through the appeals process much faster and with a better understanding. The RAMP opt-in election letter. Here on the screen, you can see a snapshot of an invitation. We identified there are almost 500,000 veterans with pending appeals within VBA, and we mailed them this letter, and we explain in this letter the benefits of this new process, and we invited them to voluntarily join us in the program. And right now, and I'll show you guys some data in a couple minutes. But we have received a significant amount of veterans opting into the program, and for the most part, I will say almost 60% of the veterans that have opted in, they have received favorable decisions, and it all starts with their election using this form. This form was designed with this barcode that you see on the top left-hand side. That barcode is allow us to route the election forms and filter them from the normal appeals applications that we received in VBA. This slide explains more in detail the ramp, supplemental, and higher level review lanes. Again, we are testing out the plans that we have to improve the process. In order to keep track of all the veterans that opt into the different lanes, we assigned what we call an end product, or an EP. Is our way to keep track of how many options are in each category, supplemental claims versus higher level reviews, that will provide the necessary feedback that we will need in order that make sure that comes time to do a full implementation, that we have addressed all of those little kinks in the process early. Continue to next slide. Okay. This slide shows some of the data. As I mentioned before, we identify some specific veterans with the oldest pending appeals, over 200,000 of them, and we mail them opt-in election letters. Of those, roughly about 30,000 replied, and from November, when we first started, to June, you can see the opt-in percentages at the bottom. I believe I have a question.
Someone have a question regarding the ramp process or any of the information being presented?
When will BVA start taking ramp cases?
Oh, very good question. Yes. So, as I mentioned, the third lane being the board lane or the BVA lane, they had to make some significant changes to their technology in order to process appeals coming to them using the new characteristics of the process, and it will not be until October, this coming October, that they'll be able to start processing the elections to the board. Now, they already started receiving opt-in letters for the board, and what they did is they created a totally new and separate docket, if you will. It's like a waiting line. So all of those veterans that have opted in already and they chose to go directly to the board, those veterans have gone to the front of the line on that special docket, and then come October 1st, they will be ready to start processing those BVA board opt-in elections. I hope that answers that question. I think I have another one. Some community board members have 501c3 as a member or partner, which allows the 501c3 to receive and manage the funds.
Yeah, Pedro, that's for another SME.
All right.
We do have a question, however, for VBA
yes.
from the.
Any plans in the future to have a VBA representative station in each medical center for veterans accessibility?
Oh, another great question, and I cannot tell you that will be addressed in the short term, but I do recall that in a meeting perhaps 3 weeks ago, 14 business improvement ideas were presented, and that particular idea was raised about placing representatives at VHA locations or NCA business offices, as well as other outside of VA stakeholders. And we understand that having board representation only in Washington, D.C. Represents a challenge, especially for our veterans and stakeholders out in the West Coast, because they're almost bound by the Eastern United States operating hours. So yes, they're looking into placing more board employees across the nation. They are also looking into technology and piggybacking on VHA and NCA partners and their video capabilities to be able to talk to veterans and address their hearings requests, for example, or potentially communicate with veterans more freely.
All right, Pedro, this is Cajun. I sincerely appreciate you taking the time and delivering this in-depth information as well as statistics and utilization of the program at this